Being the last speaker, I think is always very good. The previous speaker has already covered almost everything. Okay, so during my presentation, there will be some repetition, which I will skip. Okay, today I will cover mostly on possibly the tax part. I being an income tax agent and also a GST tax agent, so maybe I can somehow help you out in this aspect, especially on the tax side. Maybe because I'm going to skip some of the presentation, I want to maybe tell you some story about Labuan. I have been in the Labuan now 37 years. Okay? Why I was there is because at that time, during in the early 80s, there was so much competitions in the Kota Kinabalu office of an accounting firm. So I say, why don't I apply the Blue Ocean strategy? So I volunteered myself to go to Labuan, which is an island which nobody want to go. I went there in 1981. You know how difficult it is during the 1980s. You cannot have dinner if you go to the restaurant after 7, because the shop closed at 7. Okay? So you better go there, have your dinner at 6 o'clock. And there is no water pipe to Labuan yet. What do? The water are from the reservoir, and there's no water supply most of the time. And you have to buy your water for cooking and for bathing. With lorries coming in a tank, and then you pump your water up into your tank, and you use the water. Also, at that time, there were frequent power cut. Daytime, nighttime, always power cut. Now, if there is a power cut during the nighttime, what do? Especially a family man. Making babies lah, kan? But I'm surprised, although there were so many power cuts and so many babies being made, but the population of Labuan never grow. Where have they gone to? I don't know. Still about 100,000 now, in Labuan. I think basically when the children start growing, they go out. They go studies and they want to come back. And it has to have other people from other parts of Malaysia to come to Labuan. Now with the new transformation plan, I think maybe the population of Labuan will grow. That is what I have been waiting for the past 30 years. Actually, I want Labuan to grow by itself with the physical presence of all the Labuan companies to be in Labuan. Then Labuan will grow. If not, Labuan will always be a transit island. People come in for a while and go away again. And the population is always 100,000. So I think the government has made the right move to have the business to be moved back into Labuan itself. Okay, there's too much talk on the Labuan already. And one thing good about Labuan is that Labuan is a duty-free island. If you like to drink, if you like to smoke, come to Labuan. Okay, it's very cheap. Car is also very cheap. Chocolate, very cheap. So it's a good place. And also, there is no GST as well in Labuan. Whatever you buy, no GST. No duty free, no duty, no GST. The goods in Labuan are supposed to be cheap. But somehow, I don't know why it's still very expensive. But only on imported goods, I think it will be cheap. But if you talk about locally manufactured goods, it is much more expensive than any other place. It's because of the transportation cost. Okay, my presentation outline is follow. Go into the definition, the advantage and benefits. I think this one, so many people has covered. Then the characteristics of a Labuan leasing company, who can set up Labuan leasing company, and then some of the Labuan leasing structures. Now, I'm not going to go through the approval requirement, application requirement, operational requirement, reporting requirement. All this has been done. Okay? The previous speaker has already covered it. so I'm not going to do that. Fees payable is also everybody has covered, but I will talk more about the tax residency requirement and also the GST. Now, what is Labuan leasing? I think so many speakers have spoken, but they have never covered this. Now, Labuan leasing is defined as the letting or subletting of property on hire for the purpose of the use of such property, with or without an option to purchase. Now, the properties will include plant, machinery, and equipment. The word is include. So aircraft, ships, everything is covered. And it also includes charter of ships. Now, this charter of ships had to be on a bareboat basis. Then you say nothing inside, just a ship or what, just an aircraft. You cannot come in. Like some of the oil and gas equipment, it has to be operated by specialized personnel. Now, that personnel should not be included as part of the leasing agreement. Now, if the personnel have to come with the equipment, then you may have to have a separate contract to supply that type of personnel. Your contract for leasing, in order to qualify as a leasing under the definition, should not have any personnel attached to that agreement. Okay? Now, the charter of ships for the transportation of passenger and cargo by sea or voyages or on time charter basis is not a leasing transaction. Now, leasing transaction, this just now the third one, charter of ships, the transportation of passengers or cargo by sea, or the charter of ships on a voyage or time charter basis, this is considered as shipping operations. Now, you want to carry on shipping operation, you can only carry on in Labuan or outside of Labuan. Now, if you carry on shipping operation in Malaysia, that is outside of Labuan, but in Malaysia, then you will be caught under the Income Tax Act, not on the Labuan Business Activity Tax Act. So you'll be very careful when you charter a ship, using a Labuan company to charter a ship. That ship must operate in Labuan or outside of Malaysia, okay, in order to qualify as a Labuan business activities. These are the advantages. I just want to go a little bit. There's an exemption of stamp duty on all instruments created relating to the Labuan business activity. The share transfer, you don't have to pay any stamp duty. Your memorandum and article association, you don't have to pay any stamp duty. Now, your leasing transactions agreement, you also don't have to pay any stamp duty. However, you have to get it stamped in Labuan itself. Okay? I don't know, since it's free, you just have to bring the document to the stamp duty. Even if so thick, I think they still have to stamp for you. Isn't it? So please, any document relating to the leasing transaction, bring it there, stamp, free. Maybe somebody to bring it there may charge you something, but I don't know. But as far as income tax is concerned, the collectors of stamp duty is concerned, is free. And the tax is 20,000 or 3% on net audited profit. And even the dividends that is paid by the leasing lessor to a shareholder, you make profits, you pay the 20,000 or 3%, and you pay dividend to a shareholder. Now, there is no withholding tax on that. There is no further tax on the dividend paid. Okay? Then the other one, I don't think you need to go through this. The leasing of vessel is on the bareboat basis. I will recover. Then approval take at least 21 days. And if you go for fast track, 5 working days. there's no limit on leasing transaction per company. I think that still applies, isn't it? So you can have one company with 100 aeroplanes inside there if you want to. Now, who can set up leasing company? Malaysian company, okay, who want to do leasing with foreign companies who want to do leasing with Malaysian companies who wish to conduct leasing for their foreign business outside of Malaysia, and also foreign companies who wish to conduct leasing through Labuan for their business outside of Malaysia. Now, these are the Labuan leasing structures that is very common in Labuan. Number one is Labuan leasing out transaction. Now, the middle part is the Labuan company. So this is a lease and sublease transaction. So let's say there's a company from Hong Kong want to lease the asset to Labuan, and the Labuan will then lease it to another country, let's say China. Now, what is the advantages of doing this type of transaction? Now, when the China company pay the leasing charges to the Labuan company, there is a reduction of withholding tax. Okay, it's only 10% under the DTA. But I think Malaysian DTA are getting very uncompetitive because we still have 10% withholding tax. The new DTA, which other countries sign, is only 5%. You know, we are still very high. And that's why, since there are so many IRB people here, I would ask you all to renegotiate all the DTA so that the withholding tax can be reduced. And then when the Labuan company pay leasing charges back into the Hong Kong company, there is no withholding tax at all. Okay? There's under a very old exemption order, which is dated back to 1998. Inside there, they still talk about offshore companies. Now, what is the advantage of Labuan company? Labuan company itself pay tax at 3% or 20,000. Then, if you own the assets, what happens? You own the assets. The same thing. Let's say the Hong Kong company owns 100% of Labuan company. Labuan company then lease the assets to a Hong Kong company. Now, when China pay Labuan, still 10% withholding tax. But when Labuan company pay the dividend back into the Hong Kong company, there's no withholding tax as well. So the dividend is tax-free. So the Hong Kong company will receive the dividend tax-free. Then the out-in. Now, this is quite popular at the moment, where Labuan company will lease the asset back to Malaysian company. Now, what are the advantages? Now, when the Malaysian company pay the leasing charges back to the Labuan company, the lease rental is exempted from withholding tax. Section 109B of the Income Tax Act does not apply because Labuan is supposed to be a tax resident. Now, here is where a lot of people do not realize or have made some mistake, is that they think that Labuan company being incorporated in Malaysia or in Labuan automatically become a Malaysian tax resident. This is not the case. Now, under Section 8 of the Income Tax Act, in order to be a tax resident of Malaysia, your management and control must be exercised in Malaysia. So if your Labuan company do not have the management and control exercised in Malaysia, then the Labuan company is not a Malaysian tax resident. And if the Labuan company is not a Malaysian tax resident, what will happen? The withholding tax will apply 10%. And the IRB is very happy that some of the Labuan company is not a tax resident, and they go after the lessee, the Malaysian lessee, and I think they have recovered hundreds of millions of withholding tax. That is because our lessor and the lessee are not properly advised. Labuan company, you must have management control. What is management control? In Malaysia, you must have a board of directors meeting in Malaysia, preferably in Labuan. You can have teleconferencing, but somebody must be in Labuan to initiate the call. And that board of director meeting do not just approve your audited account. If you do that, it's also not okay. That board of directors meeting must discuss and approve your business operational strategies and your business plans and things like that. It's not just a rubber stamp. You must have your meeting in Labuan itself, maybe once a year or even preferably twice a year. In Labuan, I welcome you. That's why the transformation plan, I like it. You better come to Labuan, to eat there, to sleep there, so that Labuan economy can grow. Then Labuan company, in this case, will pay leasing charges back into the Singapore, let's say, the Singapore company. Then again, there is no withholding tax. The one to come to Labuan up, there is no more withholding tax. Labuan company pay 3% or 20,000. Okay? Then this is another variations of the ownership, list the asset, and also to be very careful when you use the Malaysian lessee. When you lease it to Malaysia, the withholding tax part must be taken care of. Okay? I think this one I am not going to cover. It's already been covered many times. Now, the fee payable, now no more distinguish between Malaysian or non-Malaysian, resident or non-resident. Annual fee is 60,000 for everybody. Subsequent leasing transaction is also 20,000 for everybody. And it has to be paid. Annual fee has to be paid before 15th of January. If you are late, penalty will come. I think a lot of trust company or a lot of leasing company, they send the money the last day, and the money never go through. Penalized. Now, this is what I have been speaking about. This is about the management and control. You have to make sure that your Labuan company, the lessor, must be a Malaysian tax resident. Now, this is to avoid domestic company, the lessee, being liable to pay withholding tax to the Income Tax Department under Section 109B of the Income Tax Act. Okay? Now, this is something that is new, Goods and Services Tax, which come into force in 2015. A lot of people do not realize that Labuan company also being covered under GST. Now, Labuan is being taxated as a taxated area together with Langkawi, Tiong Man. Okay, Labuan, Langkawi, Tiong Man, they are so-called taxated area whereby there is no GST within these three islands, or if the transaction is between these three islands, okay? From Labuan to Langkawi to Tiong Man and come back, there is no GST. However, as long as when the Labuan is exporting or transferring goods from Labuan to a mainland Malaysia, they call it PCA, Principal Custom Area, or you provide services from Labuan to people in Principal Custom Area, GST is payable. Okay? That's why I also encourage people to work in Labuan. I don't know GST there, but so your cost of living should be cheaper, okay? Now, I'm going to give you some situations. There are 6 situations where GST is payable or not payable. Situation 1, the Labuan leasing entity lease the plant, machinery and equipment, including aircraft, including ships or whatever, from a foreign country. You lease it, Labuan company lease it, and then I release it to a foreign company. Okay? Just the so-called out business. Now there, I don't think there is any GST lah, because it is out of scope. But don't bring your equipment to Labuan and then send it out lah. Then you got problem. If the equipment remain outside and is out business, then there will be no GST payable because it is out of scope. Now, situation number 2. The Labuan leasing entity leased the plant and machinery from foreign country and released it to a Malaysian resident, okay, which is very popular. And the plant and machinery is already in Labuan to be removed from Labuan to the principal custom area. Understand what I mean? If your machinery is in Labuan and you move it out, okay? If it's not in Labuan, then it's a different situation. Because the law distinguishes between whether the goods is in Labuan first or not in Labuan. Okay? The word is removed from DA to PCA. Now what happened? The leasing entity in this case is considered as importing services into the designated area because you lease it from another country. And then you export the goods to the principal custom area. Now under the Custom Act, the GST Act is a little bit funny that leasing of equipment, leasing agreement is considered as exportation of goods into Malaysia. Although it's a service, but somehow they say this is a goods. And because of that, the Labuan lessor will have to be registered and charge GST on the transacted value of the leasing agreement. Transacted value, there's one missing word there, to the Malaysian lessee. And he has to make a declaration under Form K1 at the point of exit, and collection of tax due and payable should be made in the office of the Royal Malaysian Customs Department in Labuan itself. However, if you have done this, that means you have to pay the GST on the total value, the value of the equipment. If you pay GST on that, then whatever leasing charges, leasing rental that you bill to the Malaysian lessee, there will be no more GST applicable because you pay the whole thing already. The big thing, you pay at one go. Okay? If that equipment is in Labuan. Now, what happens if that equipment is already in the principal custom area? Now, that is a little bit different lah. Like the aircraft, when you lease the aircraft to Malindo, AirAsia, or MAS, the aircraft is already in Malaysia. Presumably, they may already pay the GST, but recently the budget also said no need lah, they don't have to pay GST. Now, under this situation, the entity is considered as importing the services into the designated area and exportation of services under a lease agreement with a tangible asset to the principal custom area. Now, importation of services into designated area is not subject to GST. The Labuan lessor will have to be registered and charge GST based on the monthly lease rental of the lease agreement. And you have to charge, you bill them every month plus the GST, and you have to account for the output tax and the input tax every month. Usually, because the transaction is big, so the amount is big, so you have to do it on a monthly basis in the GST return. Someone was asking me whether you can have an agreement whereby the lessee do the reverse charge. I am not very sure. Before 2017, 1st January, I think you can do that. But after that, the law has been changed. And it says that all the GST relating to Labuan has to be paid in Labuan itself. I'm not very sure. Some of the lawyers may be much better than me. Okay? Then you have a leasing company which own I own it, and I lease it to a foreign company, Now, in this case, you are making a zero-rated supply because your exportation of services. And of course, if your export is more than 500,000, you register. However, you can also ask for exemption because mostly you only collect and pay over. You don't have a lot of input tax. So you can apply for exemption. Now, once exemption is given, you cannot claim input tax. Whatever input taxes you pay, you cannot claim. Okay? Then you have own the machinery and lease it to a Malaysian resident. And like I have said just now, if the goods is in Labuan, then you better be careful. You have to pay all the GST when you move it out. Huh? You have to move it out at one go, one big sum. But however, if the goods is already, if the machinery is already in the PCA, then you only bill your lessee GST on the monthly leased rental. Okay, so this is, I think this is it, sixth situation. I think this is the first time that you have heard about GST in Labuan. So there may be a lot of new things, a lot of questions to be asked. Okay, I will be willing to take more questions during the forum sessions. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Datuk. I think Datuk can stay on stage. Yeah, we'll start.